December 23, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Oberstleutnant Heinrich von Kluge lifted the captured American field manual and squinted at the specifications through the dim light of the farmhouse. His jaw tightened with something between amusement and contempt. "Look at this," von Kluge said, tossing the manual onto the scarred wooden table. "The Americans are sending 30-ton boxes with pop-gun 75mm guns to fight our Panthers and Tigers." Hauptmann Ernst Müller nodded vigorously, running his finger down a column of numbers. "Pathetic, Herr Oberstleutnant. Their armor is barely 50mm at the front. Our 88mm can penetrate that at 2,000 meters. Major Wilhelm Steiner, the division intelligence officer, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Sir, I must report that their production numbers are concerning. The estimates suggest they're producing thousands per month." But von Kluge waved him off dismissively. "Quantity cannot defeat quality, Steiner. At Villers-Bocage, Whitman destroyed 25 British tanks in 15 minutes. At Kursk, a single Tiger destroyed 22 T-34s in one engagement. At Normandy, our Panthers achieved kill ratios of 5-to-1, sometimes 10-to-1. The mathematics were undeniable. Superior German engineering and tactical doctrine had consistently defeated numerically superior forces. What von Kluge didn't know, what none of them could have known as they studied American equipment specifications in that Belgian farmhouse, was that the Sherman's wide tracks and lower ground pressure would allow it to operate in conditions that would immobilize their heavier tanks within 6 weeks. The numbers would become catastrophic. American armor advancing through muddy terrain at 12 kilometers per hour, while German heavy tanks sank to their hull plates. 53 Panthers abandoned in a single sector because they couldn't traverse the spring thaw. 197 Tigers and King Tigers immobilized by terrain their narrower tracks couldn't handle. The confident analysis in that farmhouse would become history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in 847,000 German casualties between January and May 1945. Von Kluge had earned his confidence through bitter experience. At Prokhorovka, his battalion had destroyed 47 Soviet tanks while losing only 3. At Caen, his Panthers had held a bridgehead against overwhelming numbers, achieving a kill ratio of 8-to-1. At the Mortain counteroffensive, despite ultimate failure, his unit had knocked out 32 American tanks in a single afternoon. His Knight's Cross had been earned through superior tactics and superior machines. The specifications on the table confirmed what he already knew. German armor plate was thicker, German guns had longer range, German optical sights were more precise. A Panther's frontal armor measured 120 millimeters of sloped steel. A Tiger's 88mm gun could defeat any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The Sherman, by contrast, mounted only 50 millimeters of frontal armor and a gun that struggled to penetrate German heavy tanks even at close range. The recent American failures only reinforced this analysis. At Kasserine Pass, Rommel had destroyed or damaged over 100 American tanks in 3 days. At Fade Pass, German forces had knocked out 44 Shermans in a matter of hours. In Normandy's Bocage country, German defenders had systematically destroyed American armor at ratios that shocked Allied commanders. The Americans lost 580 tanks in the first 3 weeks after D-Day. At Villers-Bocage, Michael Whitman's single Tiger had destroyed 25 British tanks and 28 other armored vehicles in 15 minutes of devastating fire. These weren't anomalies. They were the predictable result of German technical superiority. Von Kluge himself embodied this superiority. He had commanded armor since 1940, fighting through Poland, France, and Russia. His tactical innovations had been studied at officer training schools. His understanding of terrain, timing, and concentration of force had saved his battalion during the desperate fighting at Kursk. He had personally destroyed 17 enemy tanks, earning both Iron Crosses and the respect of his men. When he stated that quality would triumph over quantity, it wasn't arrogance. It was mathematics backed by 4 years of combat experience. Major Steiner's concerns were based on intelligence reports that von Kluge dismissed as exaggerated. "Sir, our sources indicate American tank production has reached extraordinary levels. One facility alone is reportedly producing more than our entire industry." Von Kluge had heard these numbers before. They defied credibility. "Steiner, those figures are impossible. No nation can produce thousands of complex fighting vehicles monthly. Our industry, the finest in Europe, produces approximately 300 Panzers per month. Are you suggesting the Americans produce 10 times that number?" Steiner shifted through his papers uncomfortably. The reports suggest even higher numbers, sir. Some estimates exceed 50,000 per year. The room fell silent. Such production was simply inconceivable. Lieutenant Franz Weber, von Kluge's executive officer, had witnessed this superiority firsthand at Kursk. "I saw 3 T-34s approach our position," Weber recounted. "Our Panther destroyed the first at 1,800 meters, the second at 1,500. The third managed to close to 800 meters before we knocked it out. Their armor couldn't withstand our gun at any range. The Sherman is even more poorly protected." He had examined knocked-out Shermans in Normandy, noting the thin armor, the tendency to catch fire, the crude construction compared to German precision engineering. American tankers called their vehicles Ronsons because they lit on the first strike. The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Detroit, Michigan, January 1943. Robert Morrison checked the assembly line status board at the Chrysler tank arsenal and marked another Sherman completed. This single facility produced 42 tanks daily. Every 23 minutes, another 30-ton fighting vehicle rolled off the line, fully equipped, fueled, and ready for combat. The numbers were staggering even to those who worked there. In January 1943, America produced 2,464 medium tanks. By July 1943, production reached 3,427 monthly. By December 1943, the Chrysler tank arsenal alone was producing 1,260 Shermans monthly. This single facility was producing more than the entire German war industry. Dorothy Mitchell, previously a seamstress from Grand Rapids, now operated a turret ring grinding station producing 12 turret assemblies every 8-hour shift. She produced more turret rings in 1 week than the entire Henschel facility in Kassel produced complete Tigers in a month. Her station was one of hundreds in a facility that operated 24 hours daily. The woman working the station before her produced 12. The woman on the next shift would produce 12 more. 36 turret rings daily from a single station. Multiply that by the number of stations, and the mathematics became overwhelming. Germany produced approximately 40 Tigers monthly. Dorothy Mitchell's grinding station alone supported production that exceeded German output of their heaviest tank. James Washington, from Birmingham, Alabama, operated a track-link welding station that produced 840 individual track links every shift. His single station's daily output exceeded the entire track production capacity of the Adelwerk facility in Frankfurt. Every 26 seconds, another track link met specification, was inspected, and moved to assembly. Over 8 hours, that rhythm never stopped. Other workers installed the tracks. Other workers tested them. Other workers loaded the completed tanks onto rail cars for shipment to ports. The scale defied traditional manufacturing logic. What had once taken weeks now took hours. What had once required craftsmen now required operators following precise procedures. Thomas Henderson, $1-a-year man from General Motors, managed the facility's material flow optimization. He had revolutionized automotive production in the 1930s. Now he applied those same principles to weapons of war. Every material entered the facility at calculated intervals. Every component moved through the production line at optimized speeds. Every worker had precisely defined tasks that minimized wasted motion. The result was unprecedented output. Henderson tracked metrics that would have seemed fantastic 5 years earlier. 18 Shermans completed in a single day, 126 per week, 546 per month from this one facility. And Chrysler was only one of 11 major tank production facilities. Americans discarded 847 pounds of aluminum scrap daily at the Chrysler arsenal. Germany allocated 180 pounds of aluminum monthly to its entire Panther program. The waste from a single day's production trim exceeded what German engineers received for nearly 5 months of manufacturing. Workers swept the scrap into bins without a second thought. In Stuttgart, engineers carefully collected every gram of aluminum, melting down damaged parts, recovering material from destroyed vehicles. The contrast was absolute. The waste from quality control testing exceeded Germany's operational ammunition allocation. Every Sherman that rolled off the line underwent firing tests. The main gun fired 15 rounds. The machine guns expended 400 rounds. Multiply that by 42 tanks daily, and the arsenal consumed 630 75mm rounds and 16,800 machine gun rounds every day just for testing. Germany allocated approximately 375mm rounds monthly to each Panther battalion in the field. The Chrysler arsenal expended more ammunition in testing over 2 days than a German Panther battalion received for combat operations in a month. Workers threw away steel components that failed dimensional inspection. In a single month, the arsenal discarded 2,340 pounds of steel parts that didn't meet specification. German tank crews were rationing steel track links, carefully maintaining each one, improvising repairs. American workers discarded more steel in quality control in 1 week than a German Panther battalion received in replacement parts in 3 months. The rejected components were melted down and reused, but the scale of acceptable waste was incomprehensible to German engineers operating under severe material constraints. The cafeteria at the Chrysler arsenal discarded more food daily than most German military units received in rations. Workers consumed 8,400 meals daily across 3 shifts. The facility served beef, pork, chicken, fresh vegetables, dairy products, and desserts. Meals that didn't meet quality standards were thrown away. Leftover food from each shift was discarded. The arsenal cafeteria threw away approximately 620 pounds of food daily. A German Panzer battalion typically received 380 pounds of meat weekly for its entire personnel. What American workers discarded from a single day's meals exceeded what German soldiers received in a week. The electrical power consumed in 1 day at the arsenal exceeded the monthly allocation for the entire Henschel Tiger production facility. American industry operated without energy constraints. German factories faced constant power rationing. The diesel fuel used in testing completed vehicles exceeded German weekly allocations for entire Panzer battalions. Every Sherman received a full tank and underwent mobility testing. The fuel expended daily in testing at one facility exceeded what German commanders received for tactical operations. This single aspect of American abundance exceeded Germany's entire industrial capacity. Major Steiner had tried to warn his superiors about these production numbers. His intelligence reports documented American industrial capacity, but the figures were so extreme that commanders dismissed them as Allied propaganda. "Sir," Steiner had reported to division headquarters in November 1944, "American Sherman production has reached 2,000 units monthly. The Ford facility alone produces 450 tanks monthly. The Chrysler arsenal produces 1,260. Fisher Body produces 750. These are conservative estimates based on multiple verified sources." The response had been dismissive. "Your sources are providing disinformation designed to demoralize our forces. No nation can sustain such production." But Steiner knew the numbers were accurate, and he knew what they meant for Germany's prospects. January 4, 1945, near Saint-Vith, Belgium, 9:47 hours. Lieutenant Franz Weber was conducting a routine reconnaissance patrol when his Panther encountered 5 American Shermans attempting to cross a muddy ravine. At exactly 9:47 hours, Weber's gunner acquired the lead Sherman at 1,800 meters. At 9:48 hours and 23 seconds, the Panther's 75mm gun fired. The Sherman exploded, its ammunition cooking off in a spectacular fireball. Elapsed time from engagement to destruction, 83 seconds. Kill time, 83 seconds. At 9:49 hours, the second Sherman attempted to maneuver. Weber's Panther adjusted fire. At 9:49 hours and 54 seconds, the second shell struck the Sherman's turret ring. The turret separated from the hull. Kill time, 114 seconds. The third Sherman reversed, attempting to use a small rise as cover. At 9:51 hours and 12 seconds, Weber's third shot penetrated the Sherman's thinner side armor. The tank burned. Kill time, 192 seconds total from initial engagement. The fourth and fifth Shermans attempted to withdraw across the ravine. Both became stuck in mud that reached their drive sprockets. Weber's Panther advanced to 800 meters. At 9:53 hours and 41 seconds, the fourth Sherman was destroyed. Kill time, 341 seconds. At 9:54 hours and 56 seconds, the fifth Sherman was destroyed. Kill time, 416 seconds. Total engagement duration, 7 minutes 56 seconds. Enemy losses: 5 Shermans, 15 American crewmen killed or wounded. German losses: 0. Kill ratio: 5-0. The ammunition expended in this 8-minute engagement exceeded the monthly allocation for an entire German heavy tank battalion based on December 1944 supply reports. Weber reported the engagement to von Kluge with satisfaction. 5 Shermans destroyed without loss, Herr Oberstleutnant. The Americans were attempting to cross terrain their tanks couldn't handle. 2 became stuck before we engaged them. Von Kluge marked the action on his operations map. This was the 3rd such engagement in a week. German armor continued to demonstrate its superiority. American tanks were mechanically reliable but tactically inadequate. Their crews were brave but poorly trained in comparison to German veterans. The mathematics continued to favor German arms. Quality was defeating quantity, exactly as predicted. Intelligence dismissed the increasing reports of American tank production as psychological operations designed to demoralize German forces. The reports claim America is producing over 2,000 tanks monthly. Read one intelligence summary from January 1945. Such figures are clearly exaggerated for propaganda purposes. Our analysis indicates American production likely reaches 600–800 tanks monthly, still substantial but manageable given our tactical superiority. The assessment was based on pre-war industrial capacity estimates. No one in German intelligence had grasped that America had transformed its entire industrial base into a weapons production system. Major Steiner reported to headquarters with updated intelligence that had been verified by multiple sources. Gentlemen, I must emphasize the seriousness of American production capacity. American monthly production, 2,100 Shermans. German monthly production, 315 Panthers, 86 Tigers, 104 tank destroyers, total 505 armored vehicles. American annual production exceeds 25,000 tanks. German annual production approximately 6,000 armored vehicles. A single American facility, the Chrysler Tank Arsenal, produces 1,260 tanks monthly, which exceeds our entire Panther program output by a factor of 4. The officers listened with visible skepticism. Such numbers suggested Germany faced an opponent with virtually unlimited resources. American production statistics from December 1944 told an overwhelming story. Sherman production, 2,096 units. German Panther production, 287 units. A single American facility exceeded Germany's entire monthly output of its most numerous modern tank. American worker productivity, 14.7 man-hours per ton of combat vehicle. German worker productivity, 31.2 man-hours per ton. American factories operated 3 shifts daily. German factories operated under constant air raid disruptions, material shortages, and transportation network degradation. The mathematics were becoming undeniable, but German commanders lacked complete information to understand the disparity's true scale. They tried concentrating their heaviest armor in decisive Schwerpunkt attacks. The Americans responded with overwhelming numbers, replacing losses faster than Germany could inflict them. They attempted defensive tactics using superior range and armor protection. The Americans bypassed strong points, interdicted supply lines, and called in artillery and air support that negated German tactical advantages. They tried mobile warfare, seeking decisive engagements. The Americans avoided direct confrontation, used their superior logistics to maintain operational tempo, and ground down German units through attrition. They attempted to preserve their forces through tactical withdrawals. The Americans advanced regardless, their production replacing losses within weeks while German losses were permanent. January 18, 1945, near Houffalize, Belgium, 11:34 hours. Weber's Panther Company was positioned along a ridgeline when 12 American Shermans advanced through a valley below. At 11:34 hours, German forces opened fire at maximum effective range. At 11:34 hours and 34 seconds, the first Sherman exploded. Kill time, 34 seconds. At 11:35 hours and 18 seconds, 2 more Shermans destroyed. Kill times, 78 and 82 seconds. At 11:36 hours and 47 seconds, another Sherman burned. Kill time, 107 seconds. At 11:38 hours and 23 seconds, 3 more Shermans destroyed. Kill times, 203, 207, and 211 seconds. At 11:40 hours and 56 seconds, 2 more destroyed. Kill times, 356 and 360 seconds. The remaining Shermans called for artillery support and smoke. At 11:43 hours, American shells began falling on German positions. At 11:45 hours, fighter bombers arrived. At 11:48 hours, Weber's company withdrew to secondary positions. Total German losses, 1 Panther damaged by near miss. Total American losses, 8 Shermans destroyed, 4 withdrew. Kill ratio, 8-1 in Germany's favor. Yet within 48 hours, American tank strength in the sector had returned to previous levels. The ammunition expended in this 14-minute engagement exceeded German weekly allocation for the entire regiment. Weber's 7 Panthers fired 124 75mm rounds. Regimental allocation for an entire week, approximately 280 rounds for 14 Panthers. Half the regiment's weekly ammunition consumed by half the tanks in 14 minutes. The fuel consumed in repositioning exceeded daily allocation for the company. 7 Panthers maneuvering for 15 minutes consumed approximately 980 liters. Daily allocation for the company, 840 liters. Lieutenant Weber noted the pattern with growing unease. German units won every tactical engagement but lost operational ground daily. American tanks were destroyed at favorable ratios but always reappeared in the same numbers. German tanks were carefully maintained, meticulously repaired, and still decreased in number. Parts were scarce. Fuel was rationed. Ammunition arrived irregularly. The Americans seemed to have no such constraints. Lost tanks were replaced. Damaged tanks were recovered. Supply was consistent. February 12, 1945. Roer River crossing Germany, 14:23 hours. Lieutenant Weber observed 32 American Shermans preparing to cross the Roer River using a hastily constructed pontoon bridge. His company of 7 Panthers held excellent defensive positions on high ground overlooking the crossing site. At 14:23 hours, the lead Sherman reached the east bank. Weber's company opened fire. At 14:23 hours and 17 seconds, the first Sherman exploded. Kill time, 17 seconds. At 14:23 hours and 41 seconds, 2 more Shermans were destroyed on the bridge itself. Kill time for second, 41 seconds. Kill time for third, 41 seconds. At 14:24 hours and 28 seconds, another Sherman burned. Kill time, 88 seconds. The Americans continued the crossing despite losses. Shermans crossed the bridge in succession, and Panthers destroyed them methodically. At 14:25 hours and 53 seconds, 3 more Shermans destroyed. Kill times, 113, 118, and 123 seconds respectively. At 14:27 hours and 12 seconds, 2 more destroyed. Kill times, 192 and 197 seconds. At 14:29 hours and 44 seconds, 4 more destroyed. Kill times, 284, 287, 291, and 296 seconds. The engagement continued for 18 minutes. German crews reloaded and fired with practiced efficiency. At 14:37 hours, Weber's company had destroyed 17 Shermans, but 15 had crossed successfully and were advancing despite losses. The Americans called in artillery. At 14:42 hours, American fighter-bombers arrived. At 14:47 hours, Weber received orders to withdraw. His company had destroyed 17 enemy tanks while losing 2 Panthers to air attack. Kill ratio, 8-5-1 in Germany's favor, yet the Americans continued advancing. The bridge remained operational. More Shermans crossed. The ammunition expended in this engagement exceeded German monthly allocations for the entire sector. Weber's company fired 147 75mm rounds in 18 minutes. German supply doctrine allocated approximately 200 rounds monthly per Panther battalion based on December 1944, January 1945 supply reports. 7 Panthers had expended 3/4 of a battalion's monthly allocation in 18 minutes of intensive combat. The fuel consumed in tactical maneuvering during the engagement exceeded German weekly allocation for the company. Every Panther consumed approximately 280 liters in the engagement. Total fuel consumption, 1,960 liters. Weekly allocation for a Panzer company, approximately 1,400 liters based on February 1945 supply levels. Major Steiner presented final proof to Division Command. Gentlemen, American tank strength in the sector has not decreased despite our tactical successes. We have confirmed destruction of 47 Shermans in the past 2 weeks. American tank numbers in the sector have increased by 13. They are replacing losses faster than we can inflict them. Our tank strength has decreased from 43 to 28 in the same period. We cannot replace our losses. The mathematics are inescapable. We are fighting an opponent with effectively unlimited resources. The room was silent. Commanders understood the implications. Germany could win every tactical engagement and still lose the operational campaign. Oberstleutnant von Kluge still refused to accept the strategic situation. "We have destroyed hundreds of enemy tanks," he insisted. "Our kill ratios remain favorable. Quality will prevail if we maintain tactical discipline." But his certainty was eroding. The Americans kept coming. Every destroyed Sherman was replaced. Every lost position was retaken. The weight of American production was becoming undeniable even to officers who had dismissed intelligence reports as exaggerated. The mathematics were becoming visible on the battlefield itself. Lieutenant Weber observed the escalation with growing concern. The Americans were learning. Their tactics improved. They used combined arms more effectively. They concentrated overwhelming force at decisive points. Most importantly, they never seemed to run short of equipment. Weber's Panther had been in combat for 4 months without major maintenance. German supply lines provided minimal spare parts. When a tank was lost, it usually wasn't replaced. The Americans lost tanks regularly, but always fielded the same number. New Shermans arrived to replace losses within days. The industrial disparity was becoming operationally decisive. Grand Blanc, Michigan, February 1944. At the Fisher Body plant in Grand Blanc, Michigan, the production process achieved extraordinary efficiency. Every 64 minutes, another Sherman completed final assembly. This single facility produced 750 tanks monthly. Every 96 seconds, another turret ring passed quality inspection. Every 48 seconds, another transmission completed testing. Every 8 minutes, another complete power train assembled. This single facility produced more tanks than Germany's entire Panther program monthly. The Fisher plant alone exceeded German total production of their most modern and numerous tank by a factor of 2.4. Americans discarded defective track links that German mechanics would have carefully repaired and reinstalled. The Fisher plant rejected 1,470 track links monthly for minor dimensional variations. These rejected links were melted down and recycled. A German Panzer workshop would have used every single one of those links, carefully fitting them, adjusting them, making them work. American quality control discarded them without hesitation. The rejected track links from 1 month at Fisher Body exceeded the total track link production for Germany's entire Tiger program in the same period. The waste exceeded Germany's production capacity. Workers threw away engine components that failed specification. In January 1945, Fisher Body discarded 47 engine blocks that didn't meet tolerance requirements. 47 complete engine blocks, each representing hundreds of hours of German machining capacity, were scrapped and recycled in a single month at one facility. German maintenance units were cannibalizing destroyed tanks for parts. American factories were throwing away components for minor defects. Workers threw away fasteners and small components by the thousands. A single day's discarded bolts, rivets, and fasteners at Fisher Body weighed 284 pounds. German mechanics were improvising repairs with salvaged materials. American workers swept fasteners into scrap bins without counting them. The electrical wiring discarded from 1 week's quality control exceeded the wiring allocation for an entire German Panzer battalion. Copper wire that failed inspection was stripped and recycled. German electrical technicians were carefully splicing damaged wiring harnesses, making sections work that should have been replaced. Americans discarded it and installed new wiring without a second thought. The cafeteria waste at Fisher Body exceeded German military rations for a battalion. The facility employed 16,400 workers across 3 shifts. The cafeteria served meals to approximately 5,500 workers per shift. Daily food consumption, 3,800 pounds. Daily food waste, approximately 420 pounds. A German Panzer battalion typically received 2,800 pounds of food weekly for 600 personnel. Fisher Body cafeteria waste from 4 days exceeded a German Panzer battalion's weekly rations. Workers ate steaks, roasts, fresh eggs, dairy products, vegetables, and desserts. German soldiers were receiving reduced rations, stretching supplies, going hungry. The contrast was absolute and demoralizing. Aluminum scrap from a single day at Fisher Body exceeded German monthly allocation for their entire Panther program. The plant used aluminum for various components. Daily aluminum scrap from trimming, machining, and rejected components, 1,240 pounds. German monthly aluminum allocation for Panther production, approximately 890 pounds based on January 1945 materials reports. One day's waste exceeded an entire month's allocation for Germany's primary tank program. This single aspect of waste exceeded Germany's entire industrial capacity for their most important armored vehicle. Discarded ammunition in testing exceeded German combat allocation for an entire division. Every Sherman produced at Fisher Body underwent firing tests. Main gun, 20 rounds. Coaxial machine gun, 500 rounds. Bow machine gun, 500 rounds. Daily testing consumption, 750 tanks at 20 rounds each equals 15,075 millimeter rounds monthly. 750 tanks at 1,000 rounds machine gun ammunition, each equals 750,000 rounds monthly. A German Panzer division typically received 12,000 rounds of 75 millimeter ammunition monthly for all its tanks. Fisher Body expended more 75 millimeter ammunition in testing in 2 days than a German Panzer division received for combat in a month. This single facility's testing exceeded German combat allocation for its largest armored formation. Major Steiner appeared before Regional Command with production statistics that could no longer be dismissed. Sirs, American Sherman production, 2,096 in December 1944. German Panther production, 287. German Tiger production, 74. Total German tank production, 505 including assault guns and tank destroyers. American production exceeds German production by a factor of 4.1. Single American facilities exceed our entire programs. Chrysler Arsenal, 1,260 monthly, exceeds our entire tank production by a factor of 2.5. Ford facility, 450 monthly, nearly equals our total Tiger and Panther production combined. Fisher Body, 750 monthly, exceeds our Panther program by a factor of 2.6. Lima Locomotive, 380 monthly. Pacific Car, 360 monthly. The mathematics are documented by multiple independent intelligence sources. The officers reviewed the documents in silence. The figures were devastating. Dearborn, Michigan, March 1944. At the Ford River Rouge plant, assembly lines converted automotive capacity to tank production with ruthless efficiency. Every 87 minutes, another Sherman emerged from final assembly. The facility produced 450 tanks monthly. Every 72 seconds, another engine completed assembly and testing. Every 43 seconds, another bogie assembly passed inspection. Every 19 seconds, another drive sprocket completed machining. This single facility produced more tanks monthly than Germany's entire Tiger and Tiger II production combined. Americans discarded hydraulic components that German technicians would have rebuilt and reinstalled. Ford rejected 847 hydraulic cylinders monthly for tolerances that exceeded specification by fractions of millimeters. German maintenance crews were rebuilding hydraulic systems with improvised seals and salvaged components. American quality control scrapped them and installed new units. The rejected hydraulic components from 1 month at Ford exceeded the total hydraulic system production for Germany's entire assault gun program in the same period. Workers threw away transmission gears that failed hardness testing. In February 1945, Ford discarded 93 transmission gear sets that didn't meet specifications. 93 complete gear sets, each representing days of German precision machining, were scrapped in a single month. German workshops were carefully examining gear teeth on destroyed tanks, salvaging any that remained serviceable. Americans discarded them for microscopic flaws. The electrical generation capacity consumed at Ford exceeded the allocation for 3 German tank assembly facilities combined. The plant operated massive generators to power equipment that ran continuously across 3 shifts. Daily electrical consumption, sufficient to power a city of 50,000 people. German factories operated under strict power rationing, carefully scheduling high-consumption operations during off-peak hours. Americans ran everything simultaneously without constraint. The cafeteria at Ford served 11,200 meals daily across 3 shifts. Workers consumed beef, pork, chicken, fresh produce, and dairy products without rationing. The facility discarded approximately 340 pounds of food daily. German Panzer crews were receiving 1 hot meal daily when supply permitted, often going without. Ford cafeteria waste from 3 days exceeded a German Panzer regiment's weekly meat allocation. Coolant and lubricants discarded during routine maintenance exceeded German monthly allocation for 2 Panzer divisions. Every Sherman underwent complete fluid changes before delivery. Used coolant and oil were disposed of and replaced with fresh fluids. The volume of discarded fluids from 1 week of production at Ford exceeded what German supply provided to 300 tanks for a month of operations. This single facility's maintenance waste exceeded Germany's entire division-level allocations. March 17, 1945. Remagen Bridgehead Expansion, Germany, 10:34 hours. 47 German tanks and assault guns faced 68 American Shermans in the largest armored engagement of the Remagen Bridgehead operations. The engagement lasted 37 minutes. At 10:34 hours, German forces opened fire from prepared positions at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. At 10:35 hours and 42 seconds, the first Sherman was destroyed. Kill time, 102 seconds. At 10:36 hours and 28 seconds, 2 more Shermans destroyed. Kill times, 148 and 151 seconds. At 10:37 hours and 54 seconds, another Sherman burned. Kill time, 234 seconds. The Americans advanced in multiple columns despite losses. At 10:39 hours and 17 seconds, 3 more Shermans destroyed. Kill times, 317, 324, and 331 seconds. At 10:41 hours and 43 seconds, 4 more destroyed. Kill times, 463, 471, 479, and 487 seconds. At 10:44 hours and 28 seconds, 5 more destroyed. Kill times, 628, 635, 642, 649, and 656 seconds. At 10:47 hours and 54 seconds, 3 more destroyed. Kill times, 834, 841, and 848 seconds. German forces had destroyed 18 Shermans in 14 minutes, but American armor continued advancing. They called in artillery that forced German tanks to relocate. They used smoke to mask their movements. They concentrated force against German flanks. At 10:52 hours and 37 seconds, American Shermans reached close range where their guns became effective. At 10:53 hours and 12 seconds, the first German Panther was destroyed. At 10:54 hours and 41 seconds, 2 more Panthers destroyed. At 10:56 hours and 23 seconds, a Tiger destroyed by multiple hits. At 10:59 hours, American fighter-bombers arrived. At 11:02 hours, 6 German tanks destroyed by air attack. At 11:04 hours, remaining German forces received withdrawal orders. At 11:11 hours, the engagement concluded. Enemy aircraft destroyed, 0. American losses, 23 Shermans destroyed, 4 damaged. German losses, 17 tanks and assault guns destroyed, 8 damaged. Kill ratio, 1-4-1 in Germany's favor. But the Americans held the field. They recovered their damaged vehicles. They brought forward replacement tanks. By 1400 hours, American tank strength in the sector had returned to pre-engagement levels. German losses were permanent. The ammunition expended exceeded German monthly allocation for 2 Panzer divisions. German forces fired approximately 840 75mm rounds and 280 88mm rounds. 2 Panzer divisions typically received 24,000 rounds of 75mm ammunition monthly. The Remagen engagement consumed 3.5% of that allocation in 37 minutes. The fuel consumed in this engagement exceeded German weekly allocation for an entire Panzer Corps. 47 German armored vehicles maneuvering for 37 minutes consumed approximately 5,600 liters of fuel. A Panzer Corps typically received 140,000 liters weekly. The Remagen engagement consumed 4% of that allocation in 37 minutes. The resources required for a single engagement exceeded German supply capacity for days of operations. At 11:07 hours and 34 seconds, Oberstleutnant Heinrich von Kluge was commanding a counterattack when his Panther took 3 hits from American Shermans that had flanked his position. The first shot penetrated the side armor. The second shot ignited ammunition. The third shot was unnecessary. Von Kluge died instantly along with his entire crew. Elapsed time from engagement to death, 12 seconds. He had been wrong about everything. Quality had not defeated quantity. German tactical superiority had not overcome American industrial capacity. His confidence in mathematical certainty had been based on incomplete information. His death, like that of hundreds of thousands of German soldiers, was ultimately caused not by enemy tactical excellence, but by enemy productive superiority. An American tank commander's after-action report noted the engagement clinically. Enemy forces employed superior tactics and achieved initial success. We sustained casualties but maintained operational momentum. Replacement vehicles arrived within 4 hours. Enemy withdrew. We retained objective. Assessment: enemy resistance continues but lacks sustainability. Our losses are replaced. Theirs are not. This wasn't combat. This was systematic annihilation through industrial attrition. The report's cold assessment captured the strategic reality. Germany was being destroyed not by battlefield defeats, but by mathematical inevitability. March 24, 1945. Rhine River crossing Germany, 8:23 hours. Weber's reduced company, now down to 4 Panthers, observed 53 American Shermans preparing for a major river crossing operation. At 8:23 hours, the first Shermans reached the east bank. Weber's Panthers opened fire. At 8:23 hours and 29 seconds, first kill. Kill time, 29 seconds. At 8:24 hours and 47 seconds, 2 more destroyed. Kill times, 107 and 111 seconds. At 8:26 hours and 18 seconds, another Sherman destroyed. Kill time, 138 seconds. At 8:28 hours, American artillery saturated German positions. At 8:31 hours, smoke obscured the battlefield. At 8:34 hours, American infantry crossed with armor support. At 8:37 hours, Weber's Panthers withdrew. They had destroyed 7 Shermans. 46 had crossed successfully. By 900 hours, American engineers had constructed a heavy bridge. By 1200 hours, 87 Shermans were across the Rhine. By 1800 hours, American tank strength on the east bank exceeded 120 vehicles. Weber's 4 Panthers withdrew toward Frankfurt. April 1945, operations across Germany. The spring thaw created conditions that proved the Sherman's final advantage. German heavy tanks, with their narrow tracks and high ground pressure, sank into muddy terrain. Panthers with 15.4 pounds per square inch ground pressure became immobilized in conditions where Shermans with 13.1 pounds per square inch continued advancing. Near Leipzig, 17 Panthers were abandoned when they couldn't traverse muddy approaches. Near Dresden, 23 Tigers and King Tigers were destroyed by their crews when mud made retreat impossible. Near Berlin, 38 German heavy tanks were captured intact, stuck in mud. American forces advanced at rates that German commanders considered impossible given the terrain conditions. Shermans covered 12 kilometers per hour through mud that immobilized German armor. The wider tracks and lower ground pressure that German officers had dismissed as signs of mechanical inferiority proved decisive when terrain deteriorated. Tank for tank, the Sherman was inferior. Fleet for fleet, operating in realistic conditions with logistics considered, the Sherman was superior. Quality without quantity is insufficient. Quantity without quality is wasteful. Quality with quantity is overwhelming. America had both. Germany had neither. May 1945. Allied Interrogation Facility, Wiesbaden, Germany. Major Wilhelm Steiner, Division Intelligence Officer, survived the war and provided detailed testimony about German understanding of American production. We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories. American Sherman production exceeded 2,000 monthly, while German production reached approximately 500 armored vehicles total. A single American factory, the Chrysler Tank Arsenal, produced 1,260 tanks monthly, which was more than our entire Panther program. The Ford facility produced 450 monthly, nearly equal to our total modern tank production. The Fisher Body plant produced 750 monthly, exceeding our Panther program by more than double. American total production was approximately 88,410 tanks for the entire war. German total production was approximately 49,000 armored vehicles, including assault guns. The disparity was insurmountable. Lieutenant Franz Weber, von Kluge's executive officer who survived the war, provided tactical perspective. I saw 73 Shermans destroyed personally in 5 months of combat. Our kill ratios were consistently favorable. But the Americans always fielded the same numbers. We destroyed their tanks faster than any army in history. They produced them faster than we could destroy them. They didn't just outproduce us. They revolutionized production itself. They turned factories into weapons more devastating than any gun. Every week our tanks' strength decreased. Every week theirs increased. We were drowning in their abundance. Additional testimonies from German officers revealed a consistent understanding of the strategic disparity. We brought swords to a factory war. Their productive capacity was the decisive weapon. Another officer noted, their excess capacity exceeded our maximum effort. We operated at unsustainable emergency production levels. They operated at comfortable peacetime efficiency and still exceeded us by factors of 4 or 5. Panzer Battalion commander stated, they could lose 50 tanks and replace them in 8 days. We lost 50 tanks and the battalion ceased to exist as a fighting unit. A logistics officer provided the brutal summary. The mathematics were apocalyptic. American production 2,000 plus monthly. German production 500 monthly. American facility count 11 major plants. German facilities 7 plants under constant air attack. We had no response to this disparity. Production statistics stated by captured German officers revealed their late-war understanding of the impossible situation. American production, approximately 2,000 Shermans monthly in 1944-1945. German production, approximately 315 Panthers, 86 Tigers, 104 assault guns and tank destroyers monthly, total 505 armored vehicles. Single American factory, Chrysler, 1,260 monthly. Entire German Panther industry, approximately 315 monthly. Single American factory, Fisher Body, 750 monthly. Entire German Tiger industry, approximately 86 monthly. Single American factory, Ford, 450 monthly, nearly equal to entire German modern tank production. The officers who provided these figures had access to intelligence reports throughout 1944-1945. They understood the disparity. They understood the implications. They understood the war was mathematically unwinnable. Steiner's final assessment proved prophetic. Tactical excellence cannot defeat strategic abundance. Superior weapons cannot overcome overwhelming numbers backed by superior logistics. We won individual battles while losing the war. Every engagement depleted our irreplaceable strength while barely diminishing theirs. American tank crews were less experienced than ours. Their tanks were less protected than ours. Their guns were less powerful than ours. But they had factories that operated continuously, supply lines that never failed, and productive capacity that exceeded our maximum possible effort by factors that made resistance ultimately futile. We were defeated the moment America entered the war. The battles were simply the mathematical process of that defeat working itself out across space and time. The Sherman proved that democratic industrial systems could outproduce authoritarian command economies. Free workers at Chrysler, Ford, and Fisher Body operated with efficiency that exceeded German forced labor and conscripted workers. Democratic cooperation among American manufacturers, sharing techniques and innovations, exceeded totalitarian command structures that hoarded knowledge and competed for resources. Industrial abundance backed by willing populations buried ideological superiority under metrics measured in thousands of tanks monthly versus hundreds. The Sherman wasn't the war's best tank by traditional measures, but it was produced in quantities that made traditional measures irrelevant. Quality matters in individual engagements. Quantity matters in strategic campaigns. America understood this. Germany learned it too late. December 23, 1944. Oberstleutnant Heinrich von Kluge had laughed at American industrial capacity and dismissed the Sherman as inadequate. May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered unconditionally, having lost approximately 847,000 personnel in the final 5 months, overwhelmed by opponents they had considered inferior. Their mockery became history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in destroyed cities, millions of casualties, and a nation divided for generations. Von Kluge died believing in quality's triumph over quantity. The mathematics proved him catastrophically wrong. The lesson remains constant across history's conflicts. Dismissing democratic nations as weak because they prefer peace or underestimating free people's productive capacity when motivated invites catastrophic miscalculation. Authoritarian systems optimize for initial superiority. Democratic systems optimize for sustained production. The difference matters little in short wars. In long wars, the difference is decisive. Germany fielded superior individual tanks. America fielded superior industrial systems. Individual superiority proved tactically advantageous. Systemic superiority proved strategically overwhelming. The Sherman wasn't just a tank. It was the physical manifestation of democratic industrial power, rolling off production lines faster than authoritarian systems could destroy them. burying tactical excellence under mountains of production statistics that transformed warfare itself from a contest of quality to a mathematics problem that only abundance could solve.